First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really honored to be here. And as you can see, my name is Jędrzej Gromadecki, and as you can see based on my name, I'm not a native English speaker. So please accept my apologies for all language mistakes up front. Today I want to talk about innovations in hospital cleaning and disinfection. And when we are really thinking about cleaning and disinfection, about chemical agents, about products you are using on a daily basis for hygiene in your facilities, you may wonder why to hell we are using those products. So please look what are the numbers. In the first instance, obviously, most important thing is to reduce number of hospital-acquired infection. And prevention is always better than treatment. On top of this, I think we are right now in the stage that prevention is a key, because pretty often we cannot even treat infections due to the multi-drug or even pan-resistant bacteria. But this is also important from a cost perspective. As you can see, hospital-acquired infection can cost a lot of expenses for the healthcare system. So this is why it is so important to focus on proper hygiene regimes, proper cleaning and disinfection. And if we are thinking about proper hygiene regimes, proper hygiene and disinfection, products we are using are pretty critical. So obvious thing when we are looking or thinking about disinfectant is the fact that this product needs to have proven efficacy. However, I will tell you a bit about efficacy, and if you are interested in details, there is a recording from one of the previous events when I'm giving speech about efficacy in details. But efficacy is not all, that's not enough. When we are thinking about modern cleaner disinfectant, about modern product, we need to think about this from three different angles. Efficacy is a key, but efficacy needs to go hand in hand with good and broad material compatibility. We are working with complex equipment, sensitive equipment, expensive equipment. It cannot be damaged by chemicals you are using. So material compatibility is one thing. Cleaning properties. Emma was highlighting the fact that cleaning is pretty important. So cleaning properties, surface aesthetics, and last but not least, regulatory compliance. We need to take into account all those three factors. So as I said today, I forgot about one thing. Safety for the staff, safety for the patients. It cannot cause, let's say, adverse effects. Chemistry you are using on a daily basis cannot cause adverse effects for the staff, also for the environment at the end. So, as I said, today I don't want to really talk too much about efficacy. However, efficacy is very well, or protocols for efficacy testing are very well established, very well described, and basis for efficacy testing in Europe is EN 14885. In this European standard, all other standards for chemical disinfectants efficacy testing are described. What I want to emphasize today is the fact that to be able to claim some efficacy, you need to have confirmation based on so-called phase 2 step 1 test, so suspension test, and also sort of under somehow simulated practical conditions, so phase 2 step 2 test, which is carrier test. And this is, for instance, pretty complete set of standards which are required for products for surface disinfection. As you can see, situation is not so straightforward, because there is a difference between disinfection with mechanical action, so wiping, mopping. There are different requirements for disinfection without mechanical action. So for instance, situation when you are spraying product on the surface and you are leaving this for a contact time. There are different standards required. So please pay attention to this. And why I'm saying this? Because as you can see, there are products on the market and there are manufacturers which I don't know why, but they are making misleading claims. Here we have one of the examples, for instance. So in this case, we have a product which claim efficacy against bacteria, however, only based on suspension test, without carrier test. So you do not really see confirmation of product efficacy based on somehow simulated practical use conditions, which for this product would be extremely important because here we are talking about ready-to-use pre-impregnated wipes. Then mandatory test organisms. Also pretty important because those mandatory test organisms was chosen based on the fact that they are most likely the most difficult one to be killed. Yeah? So they are representing, they are sort of gold standard. If your product show efficacy against those mandatory organisms, it means that it's effective against all other bacteria, for instance, or other yeast. And here we also have example of product which is claiming efficacy based on non-mandatory strain. Worth to think about this. Same in case of mycobacteria, also not mandatory strain. So question mark. Same about virucidal efficacy, also not mandatory organisms. And that's how proper claim set should look like. This is based on example of one of our products, pre-impregnated wipes, which are claimed to be bactericidal, yeasticidal, and effective against enveloped viruses. Obviously, for healthcare settings, product with a mechanical action, product which is claimed to be disinfectant cleaner. So as you can see, suspension test and carrier test, so-called four-field test, type of conditions, because you can have different type of conditions, low organic load, high organic load in the efficacy testing, mandatory organisms, same for yeasticidal efficacy, suspension test, carrier test, conditions, mandatory organism describing the standard, virucidal efficacy, same logic, suspension test, carrier test, and mandatory test organism. That's how, based on the currently available standards, claims that should look like, or that what should be the standards for product with mechanical action. But as I said, efficacy is not the main goal for today. Today, I really want to talk more about cleaning properties, material compatibility, extremely important, and obviously product safety for staff, for patients, and also for the environment. However, when we are taking all those things into consideration, we cannot forget about regulatory compliance. And again, unfortunately, legislation in Europe is not straightforward. It cannot be. And disinfectants are classified under two different regulations. Biocidal product regulation on the one hand, on the other hand, medical device regulation. Why is this so important? Well, it can have some legal consequences in case that something will go wrong or equipment will be damaged. Somebody can say, okay, but you didn't use proper product. You use, for instance, for medical device, let's take, I don't know, operating table as an example, yeah? You disinfected this product with a biocidal product. That's illegal. That's why it's pretty important to pay attention also to the regulatory status. And basically for a healthcare settings, state of the art from the regulatory perspective is to have so-called dual-use products. I'm obviously talking about hard surface cleaning and disinfection. Frequently touch surfaces, stuff like that. So product which is classified on the one hand as a biocidal product, PT2, product type 2, so general surface disinfection, which means, I don't know, door handles, handrails, stuff like that. On the other hand, product which is classified as a medical device. Most commonly for such application, class 2, which means that product is suitable for operating tables, outer surface of NMR, for instance. Such combination is really state-of-the-art for the healthcare settings. And such product is called dual-use or dual application product. But okay, we are moving to the creme de la creme, material compatibility. Why material compatibility is so important? I already told you, and I think you know much better than me, yeah, from your daily work, that equipment is expensive, equipment is sensitive, equipment need to be disinfected to avoid transmission of pathogens. So where to find compromise? Basically, when you are choosing product for your daily use, when you are choosing cleaner disinfectant, you really need to think on top of efficacy about material compatibility and how to combine those things. So on the one hand, to achieve expected efficacy level. On the other hand, how to protect your equipment. So you really should expect confirmed material compatibility against metals, plastics, elastomers. And generally, material damage by chemical agents, in majority of cases, we are talking about chemical agents, are called corrosion. There are different types of corrosions, and I don't want to really go into scientific details. However, we can observe electrochemical corrosion, biological corrosion, and stress cracking corrosion. For equipment, first one and the last one are the most important. First one will be extremely important for metals, and that's how corrosion looks like under microscope. As you can see, when metal is affected mainly by chemical agent, surface will be very rough. There will be a lot of cracks, and there are little holes. Why is this so important? On the one hand, visual effect. On the other hand, corrosion is affecting mechanical properties of the product. But last but not least, such corroded surface is extremely great surface for a microbial growth. Such cracks, such holes are very easily contaminated by biofilm, and such biofilm is basically not possible to remove, to eradicate biofilm from such corroded surface. So when your equipment is damaged, is corroded, you are also increasing risk of potential infection transmission. So pretty often, your disinfection will not be successful in such case. Pitting corrosion is a special case of electrochemical corrosion, and as you can see under microscope, it can really create pretty big hole, pretty rough, which, as I said, can be really contaminated by biofilm. Obviously, there are different types of materials which are used on a daily basis. One of them are, let's say, more sensitive, especially soft metals like aluminum, like copper, like brass. There are others which are not so sensitive, like stainless steel. However, again, in terms of principle, material compatibility is extremely important, so it's really worth to check, to ask about material compatibility data, because as you can see, it's not only about visual effect. It is also about structural damage. At the end, may happen that you need to get rid of equipment, and at the end, it is also causing higher risk of infection transmission, because it's very hard to properly disinfect such corroded places. I've already mentioned about the biofilm formation, and here you can see another microscopic picture of such rough surface, which is really a great surface for microbial growth. By the way, it can also have impact. That's pretty theoretical consideration, but when you are thinking about efficacy testing, you are distinguishing between testing on non-porous surfaces and porous surfaces. Usually, healthcare surfaces are considered as non-porous surfaces. However, in such case of corroded surface, it will not be non-porous surface anymore. Yeah. So again, we are coming back to simple fact: disinfection in case of material damage will or may not be effective anymore, and risk of infection spread can really increase. And here I want to show you how innovation look like, and I want to show you a couple of data of our recent developments against sort of market standards. Mainly hydrogen peroxide and bleach. Bleach, which is very commonly used in healthcare settings. Okay, I understand why. It's relatively inexpensive, have pretty good efficacy spectrum. However, in the long-term run, can cause a lot of damage. So as you can see from a corrosion rate study on different materials, here we have on aluminum, our recent development based on stabilized chlorine dioxide. As you can see, it's pretty flat, so almost no impact on material compatibility. It's not causing really corrosion. Whereas bleach, that's the green one, have very high corrosion rates, higher than hydrogen peroxide based product. maybe it's even better to see this here. And those are the effects. Those are the effects, how such surface treated with bleach will look like in pretty short term. So again, costs related with repairs, costs related with a new equipment, costs related with potential spread of infections. And then you can wonder, okay, we are really paying a lot of attention. We are doing a lot of efforts to make proper cleaning and disinfection, and we still have high infection rates, for instance. Yeah, it's worth to think maybe it's caused by damaged equipment. Just for your consideration. But for sure, this is a risk factor, and commonly used disinfectants are not always great. Again, I wanna really emphasize bleach here, that bleach is not great. Next one, stress cracking, which is extremely important for plastics. We are working, or you are working, in your daily work with a lot of sensitive equipment, with a lot of plastics, polymers, etc., 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 especially when you are thinking about medical devices, so newborn incubators, external surfaces of NMRs, operating tables, even patient beds, yeah? All mattresses are covered with some synthetic, with some, let's name generally, plastics. And if you are using not the right chemistry, you can really damage structure of those plastics, and at the end, you can see such outcomes. So very sensitive materials will be very sensitive because connections between inside the polymer will be break down by the chemistry, and equipment will be simply damaged. Will not be possible to use this equipment anymore. And that's the result of our study. So again, our formulation our few formulations based on different chemistries, our recent developments in stress cracking test against other products. And here again, I want to really pay your attention to bleach. You see that bleach is causing a lot of issues with materials. Same hydrogen peroxide, also in case of polymers, in case of plastics. So damage of material structure, which obviously will end up with lower, let's say, mechanical resistance, but also such surfaces will be much easier contaminated by microbes. So if you would like to summarize this somehow, which chemistry is good where, which chemistry is not the best one, I would really need to say that in the current modern healthcare environment, bleach is very old-fashioned product, and material compatibility of bleach is extremely, extremely limited. So not very good for metals, not very good for plastics, not very good for elastomers. Okay, still good compatibility with ceramic, still good compatibility with glass. So, in my opinion, what does it mean? Use of bleach should be really limited to bathrooms, for instance, where in majority you have ceramic tiles, you have glass, you have materials which will not be sensitive to bleach. But it shouldn't be really used for treatment of modern equipment, shouldn't be really used to treat modern surfaces. Even floors, I believe in majority of cases in your hospitals you have sort of polymers on floors. Bleach will not be good for this. Alcohols, pretty similar situation. Alcohols are good for metals, that's true, but in terms of plastics, elastomers, alcohols have very, very, very limited material compatibility. Alcohols can really cause a lot of stress cracking, corrosion. On top of this, please bear in mind that alcohols do not have any cleaning properties. They will only fix organic load on the surface. Then we have quaternary ammonium compounds, which have very good and wide material compatibility, and stabilized chlorine dioxide, which also, that's our latest development, stabilized chlorine dioxide, which shows also very good and broad material compatibility. Obviously, taking into account the fact that this product have some oxidizing properties, will not be great for some soft metals like copper, brass, but that's the nature, yeah? That's the nature of the chemistry. But in terms of all other materials, it's pretty or very good. Okay, so we have efficacy, we have material compatibility, we have a regulatory compliance. Cleaning. In my opinion, only surface which is clean can be effectively disinfected. So that's the one part of the coin. That's the one side of the coin. Obviously, visual aspect is the second thing. And here, as you can see, there are also huge differences between products, even based on the same chemistry. Here we have example of two quad-base, ready-to-use pre-impregnated wipes. New-gen LLD wipes, which are our wipes, and some market standard quad-base wipe. As you can see, difference in cleaning properties is huge. And if you are looking on graphs, okay, maybe that's not so important, but when you are looking on picture, so how it really works on dry blood, you can easily see significant difference. So here you also should pay attention to what is the cleaning performance. Again, bleach. As you can see against our latest developments, bleach is also not performing very well in terms of blood removal from the carriers. Then cleaning / surface aesthetics or surface tackiness. Also pretty important factor. Nobody really like to walk on the floor which is sticky. Yeah? So here you can see difference between different chemistries. Water as a control, one of the latest developments, new-gen LLD quad-base wipes, alcohol-based wipes, and some competitive quad-base wipes, one of the leading market ingredients. I have to admit that the result of this study was a huge surprise for me. Because I never expected that alcohol, which should evaporate very quickly from the surface, shouldn't really leave any residues, will really end up with such result. So worse from our quad-base product. In very simplistic words, it means that our surface, so our product leaves the less residues which will cause sort of tackiness on the surface, so it's better even than alcohol-based product, which will have impact on the surface aesthetics, which I believe is pretty important. And here, again, comparison of surface aesthetics, our stabilized chlorine dioxide-based product against sodium hypochlorite against bleach products. You can see significant difference in surface aesthetics. And by the way, I think if surface aesthetics is not good, somebody can say, oh, it was not properly cleaned. That's how people are thinking, yeah? Which do not need to be necessarily the case, but that's how people are thinking. Okay. So we have efficacy, we have material compatibility, we have cleaning properties, surface aesthetics, tox profile. Very important for the staff, very important for the patients, very important for the environment. And here I want to pay your attention mainly to one thing, because I know that still sodium hypochlorite bleach is very widely used. There is one huge issue with bleach. Bleach can generate or is generating so-called chlorinated or halogenated organic compounds. Chloroform is one of the examples of such chlorinated organic compounds. Why should really bother about this? Because chlorinated organic compounds or halogenated organic compounds are pretty toxic. Among others, they can cause cancer, they can cause endocrine disruption, and they can also cause immune system suppression. And you know, exposure to halogenated organic compounds can occur among obviously also other pathways like skin contact, like drinking contaminated water, etc. And obviously severity of effects will always be dependent on type of compound, concentration, duration of exposure, etc. But fact is that sodium hypochlorite, so bleach, can react or is reacting with organic compounds and is creating byproducts like chloroform. On top of this, bleach from pure product profile perspective is causing skin burns, eye damage, nose and throat irritation. I think you've heard from your staff pretty often, yeah? That they do not like to work with such products. Lung irritation, headaches, dizziness, vomits. Something what really worth to have in mind. In opposite to this, I've mentioned a couple of times about one of our latest developments, which is stabilized chlorine dioxide. Chlorine dioxide, first of all, is not a bleach. That's a totally different compound from the chemistry perspective. And stabilized chlorine dioxide do not have any potential to react with, or maybe not to react, but not in a way which will lead to halogenation of organic matter. That's the huge benefit of this chemistry. So, just to summarize, I think I'm on time. Key takeaways, in my opinion. Antimicrobial efficacy must be determined by passing latest approved EN standards, which are described very well in EN 14885. Material compatibility is a key from a number of reasons. Savings, patient safety, visual aspect. Choosing the wrong disinfectant can damage mechanical integrity, can damage equipment visually, and can, let's say, speed up spreading of infections. So at the end, we need to find a compromise or we need to find the products. And that's not very easy, but such products exist, which will have very good and broad microbial efficacy, in the same time, good tox profile, and good material compatibility. So those are my takeaways. I've mentioned about our offering, about stabilized chlorine dioxide, about our other quad-based products. So I will stop here. Thank you for your attention, and if there are any questions, I will do my best to answer.